Hello, this is Alan Wheeler here at the cleverly disguised YouTube channel, Alan Weaver. And I'm sitting here at my altar, Stevie Nicks music playing in the background because of the tarot deck I want to look at tonight, the Crystal Visions Tarot. And if possible, I'd like to do a couple videos tonight, but I think I'll cut them off and make them separate. The first one's a bit of a transition into yet another member on my Council of Seven. And I did a video or two with the Tarot of Vampires and consulting the Empress of that deck. And tonight I have a few questions that were on my heart this morning that I wrote down. And after asking the deck about herself, I'd like to do some videos asking those questions. I tried to make it home and get things set up before night fell, but even though it's not 6 yet, it's already dark outside. But I did manage to get my incense burning here. A new black cherry candle lit for Isis, among others. And I've not reworked, but just kind of reset and touched things here, just activating my own heart. I added tonight an image of Hecate, which in the last video I pronounced Hecate, like the beer, I guess, Tecate. Someone online said the pronunciation can be Hecate, 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 and there's various Hecate, various theories and pronunciations. But here she is holding a green magical lantern, it looks like. The goddess of night, the phantom goddess, the goddess of witches. So I've put her out here with Odin, Freya, Isis, Loki, along with many decks and runestones and other things here. So I am going to move the laptop and camera over to the altar. Hang on. And here we go. Now sometimes I forget to mention that if I speak too slowly, and I just process slowly unless I script or unless it's something I've taught in class many times before, I tend to speak slowly and pause. So if that is a stumbling block or hindrance, I think you can click on the icon and ramp up the play speed, and that way you can tolerate that. So by way of transition, I just did a video recently, and it was called Tarot of Vampires, Message from Aphrodite, I think. And the three cards I pulled were the World, which was kind of the centerpiece, the Fool, and the Four of Skulls from Tarot of Vampires. And I pulled the rune Tiwaz that looks like an arrow pointing up, which sometimes means focus, direction, um, the noble or higher way or battle. And I associated that with the world as being the goal, that synthesis, that harmony, that mountaintop experience. That card had come up the video before asking about intuition, and as kind of the idea of that joyous, victorious feeling, synthesis when elements come together and we know something. So upon further thought, whether we take that to be those mountaintop experiences or intuition itself, I mentioned in that video and the one before on book meanings that some people say we should mix, when reading tarot cards, we should mix almost 50-50, 50%, 50% intuition with those objective book meanings. And looking at those cards, thinking later, I thought that's surprising those cards reflect that in a way. If the world is intuition, those flashes of insight, or tapping into, it feels like channeling the divine sometimes, and maybe it is. But if we break that down, maybe part of that is the Fool, and that's described in Tarot of Vampires as that being liberated from Earth, as that vampire comes up out of the ground there in that picture. That leap of faith, that imaginative fling that we're familiar with from the Fool energy, but perhaps part of that, or the other side of the coin, is that very earthy structure and defensive energy of the Four of Skulls, skulls which is earth, and pentacles or coins in other decks. If we looked at that card, the Four of Skulls by itself, it almost breaks down into two halves as well, 50-50. There's the active defense of the armored figure with the bloody battle axe. Then there's the more passive protection or defense of the beautiful woman leaning against the fortress, and more reflective of home or the protective walls of place. And so perhaps there's a yin and yang to both the book meaning and the intuition, not so easily separated, but in those experiences we get those higher flashes. And so as I sat with those cards, I continue to sit with them and absorb them. That's some of the thoughts that I've had so far from that previous reading. Now, another that message seemed to come from Aphrodite, and I related the story of Aphrodite. And I want to relate from another earlier video. I did a reading on wanting clicks, and I was coming back too often to see how many subscribers or views I was gathering here. And I did a reading on that, and I felt that the community and the connection finding the niche, the right place was more important than that almost endless black hole of just chasing clicks. And I kind of caught myself, found a check in my spirit just for myself regarding that. I think that's a worthy goal for someone that's has different purposes or a different path in any kind of art or sharing. So that, coupled with another reading that I did on sacred sexuality, in which I got no cups whatsoever in the reading, and I pulled the rune Nodhes, which means what is lacking, what is needed, and it was that love that seemed to be missing. And I may be trying to synthesize too much at once here. Well, I think I'll pick that up in one of the other readings. But about that intuitive leap of faith of the Fool, reaching the world card, I came across in one of my, this, you can see this book has been through the years, but in one of my collections of sacred writings, this is Thomas à Kempis here. And he describes at the end of the chapter, I just came across this, I just opened the book and came to this quote during my thoughts about that I just described, about intuition and the reading from Tarot to Vampires. And it says, being inflamed with love, we may transcend the narrow limits of human reason. So, with my thoughts on Aphrodite and on Hecate today, I reach for the Crystal Visions Tarot, and I keep it here in the bag from China. I brought back from teaching English there, and I keep it with my first crystals that I ever acquired, and there's some quartz and some rose quartz in here, and I would just keep them in the box and take that out every time I did a reading with the Crystal Visions Tarot. And the artist, Jennifer Galasso, I'm pronouncing that wrong probably, was inspired by Stevie Nicks, and so I'm playing her music in the background now along with the incense and candlelight. But here, my first experiences with this deck were almost like bonding with this maiden, the maiden of the Crystal Visions Tarot. And she's standing in water up to her waist and gazing into a vessel here and having visions and intuitions, and being a very watery sense and a very fantastical artwork. It's almost like a fantasy world, which is why I got the deck. So being so watery, the kind of the logical, objective, book meaning avenue of thinking makes me think of Aphrodite. And there's often pictures of her coming up out of the waves. Aphrodite, that is. My intuition is associating this deck with Hecate because of the mystical, magical, witchy feelings involved. So So let's ask the cards before I close out this first video here tonight. And I'm going to give the cards a shuffle. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 shuffles. My customary, if not ritualistic, 8th shuffle number 8. And a cut. Let me just pull one card to start. And the card I pulled is the 9 of Swords. The 9 of Swords. I most recently had the 9 of Swords appear in the reading on intuition, and I interpreted that as fears of ways we access intuition. And certainly years ago, I feared using the tarot cards themselves. And then after that, I feared any ideas of mediums or channeling. But yet my first experiences with this deck were tapping in to the almost personified character of the deck who talked to me. So maybe this speaks of those mental reservations and fears that would hold back from experiencing all that could be experienced. Let me draw another card. Here's the Wheel of Fortune, how things change in time. The tables turn, and things come to fruition. Highs and lows of life. And so maybe it speaks of this change, turning from the fears. In the picture I had, the story I had of seeing Hecate begin to reflect, and Aphrodite reflect each other, and Hecate becoming beautiful like some of her pictures, that almost all the pictures I've seen of her and images are beautiful ones, and Aphrodite reflecting the magical dark nature a bit of Hecate, and coming out of that, seeing that transformation coming out of that cave. Maybe that's the change, the turning of the wheel there. That certainly happened through this deck in the past, and maybe it's that spiral is continuing and increasing. And finally, 8, Strength. And that's the inner strength, inner peace, that power that comes from within, pictured by the tamed lion here. So the question was, what do we need to think about, or what do we need to know coming to this council member to ask these questions of the Crystal Visions Tarot? maybe to release those fears and let that change continue, and to find strength and peace within. And I just noticed there's birds atop these swords, crows, maybe representing those fearful thoughts. And here, as they fly in the sky, maybe they're set free in that inspiration and intuition that maybe gives strength or brings strength, or both. So that's the Crystal Visions style of art, if you're not familiar with it. And here's a character with wings, but seems to be brought to earth, the cold earth, and that snow. And I believe many of the cards in the sword suit show cold and snow and crows, as well as the swords. The lotus flower appears in some of the cards. The world card, I know, has a picture of meditation and the lotus. And in this major arcana card, we see the sunflowers. So that's the style of the art of Jennifer Galassos, maybe. Maybe it's pronounced Tarot, Crystal Visions, Tarot. It's been 22 minutes, so I'm going to stop here and go into my first question in just a minute. Thank you for watching, and many blessings to you.